for joining us at Fort Bend County Libraries for the author interview with Tonya Duncan Ellis in conjunction with Fort Bend County, their initiative, Diversity Over Differences. Tonya Duncan Ellis has had her nose in a book since she learned to read, so it's no surprise that one day she'd become a writer. She is the author of the Amazon best-selling Sophie Washington children's book series, a former journalist, and a member of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. Fluent in French, Tonya loves learning about other cultures and has traveled to 49 states and 20 countries. She lives in Houston, Texas, with her husband and 3 children. Welcome, Tonya.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Tell us about your journey to becoming a published author.
Okay. Well, as you said in my introduction, I'm a former journalist, and I've always written, really from the time I was a little girl. I won my first writing competition at my school in 5th grade, and that kind of got me inspired to become a writer as a career. And so when I went to college, I studied English literature, and I kind of dovetailed into French because I was also studying French language courses, and there was an opportunity for me to study overseas. So I took advantage of that. And when I was there, I ended up staying in Europe a year and a half over the time. So I changed my major to a French major and became fluent in French at that time. But in between, and each summer session, I had internships at newspapers because that was my goal, to be a journalist when I went into college. And so every summer I worked at newspapers, I had clippings, and that was how I built a portfolio to get a job as a journalist. And so I worked in journalism for a while, and I started out as a business reporter. So I was interacting with a lot of people in the business community, and I got interested in that area as well, because though I loved the writing that I was doing, when I was interning, I was doing feature stories like interviewing a private pilot. I got to ride with an African-American police officer, and I did all these really interesting feature type stories. But as a real reporter in my job, I was sent out on weekend beats to cover people who were murdered, crimes, and things like that. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this. I want to do this forever. So I went on to get an MBA and focused in business. So I've done quite a few different things, but even in that job, I did a lot of writing. And when I got married and had my kids, I started doing freelance writing for magazines. And I did that for over 10 years. And when I would read with my children during the time period, I noticed a lack of diversity in the books that we were reading. And I said, well, I've always wanted to write my own book. And I think that I could write a book myself that would feature an African-American protagonist. And that's how the Sophie Washington series was born.
How many books have you written?
11. My 11th book came out in this past November, Class Retreat.
Does each book cover one school year?
Really in the 6th grade, and in the first 2 books in the series, she's in the 5th grade, okay, and she's in the 6th grade, so she stays in that same grade throughout the series. One of my sons was like, it's Christmas one book, now it's spring break, it's different. But I modeled it on some of the middle grade series I would read with my kids during those, when they were that, they would kind of stay in the same grade. They'd have Halloween, Easter, they'd have different things. So that's kind of why I kept it that way.
You mentioned bullying in your books. Is that a common theme?
Right. And I noticed that in myself when I'm writing, but that age group has a lot of bullying. You're going to see a lot of that in that middle grade or middle school, upper elementary. Those are kind of the problems. And in one of my books, I even tackle cyberbullying. Yeah. In Sophie Washington, my BFF. So that is a common theme that weaves through many of the books, being true to yourself, standing up to bullies, and just being yourself, being strong in your own character. So that is, I guess that's kind of in my heart when I'm looking at these kids in this age range when I was writing the books.
How do you brainstorm ideas for your books?
They kind of evolved naturally because when I wrote the first book in the series, Queen of the Bee, I was heavily involved in spelling bee competitions with my own children as a judge, and they were spelling bee champions, and so I was coaching them. So, and then The Snitch came about. The second book, The Snitch, talks about them facing a bully and being afraid to tattle on the bully. And I actually saw that happening with my children and kids in the class who were more afraid of being called snitches than tattling. So they come about just by my observations and my own life experiences. With Hurricane, I was forced to evacuate my own home during Hurricane Harvey. So that inspired that book, because I had planned to write Mission Costa Rica before that. But then that happened, and that impacted me so that it inspired me to write that book. So they kind of just come, the ideas. But as the series goes on, it gets where, okay, what can I do now? With BFF, it tackles plagiarism. And I kind of brainstormed with my kids too with that one. I was like, what kind of things have you seen in school? What kind of challenges do kids face? A lot of the ideas just come to myself. And even with Secret Santa, my holiday book, I had wanted to write a holiday story. So I just said, okay, I came up with that concept of having the Secret Santa sending her gifts.
Do you have ideas for future topics?
I kind of want to write a book about her learning about her finances, or them earning money or something like that. That's kind of my plan for the next book in the series.
Will the Sophie Washington series continue, or will there be a different series?
I actually am writing a new series I don't know if it'll be a series, but I'm writing a new novel with the boy main character. So we'll see where that takes me, or what happens with that one. Yeah, but I don't know about Sophie going on to books, but I had planned on it ending at book 10, and then the readers kept requesting another book. So that got me to continue on with it, because they're enjoying the stories.
Do you create the illustrations for your books?
No, actually, my illustrator's name is Michael Ruangol, and he is from India. Oh, wow. So I had some friends who they produced an African-American themed comic strip called Fearless Five, and they had him illustrate their comics. And I was a little afraid to use him because I've actually never spoken to him. We communicate by email, but it's been a great relationship with him. From my brain to the page, when I send it to him, he really captures what I want. Now, sometimes one book, they were playing basketball and he had a picture of baseball players. So I have to say, no, we don't. And in some books, I'll have like the wild hogs that we see here in Houston, in the suburbs of Houston. He had little pigs, like regular pigs. So I'll send clip art images of what I want, so he'll get a feel for what I'm trying to describe.
Are some details in the books based on your own family or friends?
My children actually did attend private Christian schools in the Houston area. So the school, Xavier Middle School, is based on the schools they attended, but it's fictional. Oh. Mm-hmm. I didn't know there was. I need to look that up and check it out. Just certain, now you read Sophie Washington Mismatched, certain things that happen in the book, because Sophie has one brother, Cole, and I have two sons, but Cole loves to play video games, and my sons are big time gamers. They love to play games all the time, and I struggle with trying to set limits and get them to put them down. So some of the little things you'll see that happen with him may be inspired by my own experiences, trying to get them to put the games down. And a lot of little things, they're fictional books, but also, for example, with Sophie Washington, Mission Costa Rica, my family and I took a family vacation to Costa Rica. Oh. So she goes there with a mission trip, helping out in the village. We went just strictly vacation, but a lot of things she does there. She goes zip lining, which we did. She goes into a river rafting trip with crocodiles in the water, and we did that. So those kind of things do inspire me when I'm writing things that I've done. And then I'll also do extra research for some books to bring in different fun facts or things to add some color into the stories. She actually is modeled. I'm a mom of three, as I said. My daughter's name is actually Sophia. And the Sophie character is modeled after my children and some of the other children I would interact with at the time that I was writing the book. And she does live in my community because the series is based in or takes place in the suburbs of Houston. Sophie lives in my community. She sees the things that I see. So she probably she has my sense of humor in my voice, I guess. But the inspiration for that character was really my kids and other children that I would interact with when they were in that tween age range.
Oh, so have they grown up since then?
Well, yeah, my kid and all the kids kind of that they're based on are teens now, older teens. But through the years, I've been room mom, parent, teen parent. I've been a Sunday school teacher for years. So I'm constantly around children and youth. I love kids. And so I am inspired by a lot of the things that I see them do. That kind of gives me the ideas for a lot of the things that you'll see in my books.
Where do you get your inspiration for your diverse cast of characters?
Okay, and that's a great question. I wanted to show with the books the diversity of the Houston community because we're one of the most diverse cities in the United States and the fourth largest. So my kids have friends who are they've had friends who've been from Mexico. They have a friend who is Nigerian or her parents are Nigerian. So I see that here in our community. I just wanted to show that. I didn't want to make them a stereotype or caricature, but Valentina does sprinkle in Spanish words in her conversation and things like that. I wanted to show the uniqueness of their culture. And then we also have an Indian character, Ronnie, who comes in Sophie Washington Code 1, and she does Bollywood dancing. And I noticed, though, I am familiar with many Indians in our community, and I've gone to different I forget the word for it, but they had different events where they had these beautiful dancing troupes of young girls, and they start when they're young. And then, when they're older, they have kind of like coming out ceremonies where they display the beautiful dance that they've been perfecting for years. So she kind of represented that. And I just wanted to show the beautiful things that we see in our community with all the different cultures. I love living here in Houston. I'm originally from Kentucky, and I've lived here for 17 years. And that's what I love about our community is just all the different peoples and the different things you can learn about different places by being a resident here in our community here in Houston. And that was kind of an inspiration for me choosing Houston as the setting of my books.
Does your background in journalism influence your writing?
I think it helps me with coming up with deadlines and things, pushing myself to complete my works in different time frames. And then I do have to do research on my work. Like all the books have different things in them. Like my newest one, Class Retreat, she is afraid of Bigfoot. And so her brother teases her. They see the show Finding Bigfoot, and she's going on a camping trip. So I did research on the history of Sasquatch and Bigfoot. And so I'll do research on different little things that I add into my books. I don't do a lot of interviewing because as a journalist, I did a lot of interviewing of different people for my stories. So I don't have to do that too much, but I do feel like that experience has helped me as a writer with these chapter books.
Do you feel like there is a lack of diversity in children's books?
And I think it's gotten better in recent years because I do read a lot of middle grade books. I just enjoy them. And since I'm a middle grade author, so in recent years, there have been many. But when I was started to write my books, maybe 2014, 2013, my kids would love little chapter books like mine. And we found none with characters that look like them. So that was really my inspiration. I kind of wanted to fill that niche for that age range because there weren't any. And my sons, actually, the books I bring to them, Little House on the Prairie, Judy Blume, they did like Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing, but some of the other ones that I had, they really weren't as interested in them. So I wanted to create something that would be relatable to the kids, that they would enjoy, and that they could see themselves in the books, because kids want to feel like they relate and that they belong. And I wanted to create that sense with the books that I wrote.
Have you heard any feedback from your readers?
Yes, I am. I'm really, that really warms my heart because I've gotten so many letters from parents thanking me for writing the series because it's getting the kids, reluctant readers, to read and feel like they see themselves and they have fallen in love with the character. And I remember when I got my first picture of a little girl dressed as Sophie for book character day at her school. And that almost brought me to tears to see this character that I had created, that the little girl identified and felt like she had something for herself, something that she could relate to. So that really makes me feel good and keeps me going on with the books in the series.
Do you do book talks in schools about representation in books?
Great question. I do school visits and I do touch some on representation. It's really based on the school's needs. Usually I'll talk about my author journey and sometimes we'll talk about the writing process. Specifically, I haven't done talks with schools about representation, but I guess having me there is giving that representation, and hearing my story and in the path is helping inspire kids and providing that representation to the students.
Do you have any advice for budding authors?
Okay, yeah. I have I'm asked that question a lot at school visits and with kids. And the main thing that I would recommend them do is to read widely, because reading in the genre that you're interested in, genre for kids would mean the area, that you're interested in writing in, is one of the best ways to get a feel for what the books are like, what the readers in that genre are interested in. And then doing writing, like journaling. I've kept a journal since I was a little girl. And during this time, I recommend with some student groups that I've talked to during the pandemic time, this would be a great time to journal about your experiences and the things you're doing. That helps you develop that writing muscle, just like in a sport, you develop in that sport and your skill set. So doing daily writing, even maybe starting a blog with parent permission, or with where you could share your writing with other people and let them see what you're writing. But those are the two things I'd recommend, is really reading widely and practicing that writing with journaling or blogging or something like that.
How do you journal?
I just have my own journal. It's my own personal journal, so it's not like a public journal, where I write my thoughts and feelings and experiences and even story ideas. I'll jot those down. And those even I'll put in my phone whenever they come to me, because a lot of times when I wake up in the morning, I'll have ideas and I'll just put them down, because then I'll forget them if I don't. I don't do it every day. And I try to. Right now, I'm writing another novel. So when I do start getting into the process with a new book, I usually get up like 5:30 or 6 every morning and write to make sure I get it in. If not, I can't get in. So I haven't been journaling as much since I've been doing that. And I started my newest book in late December. But I try to do it daily if I can, as my schedule allows. And especially this year with the pandemic, I wanted to just record all of my thoughts and feelings and things so that I could look back and see.
What's your writing process?
Well, for me, for the Sophie Washington series, the first two books took me about 6 to 8 months each, because I was creating the new world with Sophie and the characters. So that took me, and at that time, those were my first books. So I was just writing any free moment I had. That was when I started getting up every day, and I would write maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours in the morning to get a lot down. And then I'll write more in the afternoon. So that's my process for that. And for each of my books, if you've read the books, they're all about 20 chapters. So those are I'm what's called a not a plot. They call it plotter or pantser in writing community. So I'm like a plantser. I'm a combination. To plot it out, I'll write my outline, which is my 20 chapters, and I'll have chapter headings, and that kind of gives me a feel. But the book may change a little bit as I go along. I may change my mind and change what I do. So, and each of my chapters are 1,000 words, about 1,000 words each. So I'll plan to at least get a chapter or two done a day. So that's kind of my schedule. So now with the Sophie Washington book, I can write the first draft in maybe a couple months. I can have the draft done.
Can you talk a little bit about the importance of drafts and the revision process? Yeah.
Okay, yes. And that's something that I talk about when I do school visits with kids,
Yeah.
because it's not like you just write it and, oh, yeah, I'm ready. The book's done. So I have to, I use what are called, well, I have critique partners as well. I'm part of the Society of Children's Books Writers and Illustrators. And so they have critique groups where as you're writing, you can have people reading it as I go along. So they can give feedback. And then I use what's called beta readers. So really my daughter Sophia, she's one of my beta readers, and my son sometimes read through, but they'll read my books for me. Then I have like 10 different people read them as beta readers, and they give feedback. Then I send them off to editors, and they go through and edit it, and then they do other copy edits. So it's a process of revisions until you get the final product. And then for me as a self-publisher, then I send, once I have it edited, then I can send it to Amazon. Really, you just upload your book. And I also get my illustrations in. So I write out all the concepts, how I want all my images. I send them to him. He comes back, and then I have them put together in a format for book. And I do my ebook formatting myself. And so then they'll be sent on.
Can you tell us a little bit about being a self-published author?
And one of my books, Sophie Washington Code 1, was recently purchased by Scholastic. So I was so excited. In December, they contacted me, and they'll be republishing paperback copies of that for a special STEM program, because the book is about Sophie and her friends in a computer coding competition. So they'll have hold of that book, and it's supposed to be in the Scholastic newsletters. Books had been reviewed by a place called Kirkus Reviews or Kirkus Reviews. Okay. So they had some favorable reviews. And then I went to the library administrative area, which is where you are. And I said, well, I would like my books to be included in circulation, and they allowed them. But it really was like a process, because my books had positive professional reviews. And then I'd been featured in the paper and things like that. So I think all of that played a role, over time. And I had my books in my community. I did a lot of community events, and teachers and librarians became aware of my books. So I think that helped get the awareness, and over time, then they included them in the circulation.
Since you pull your stories from life events, will Sophie go through the pandemic?
That's a great question. I've been asked that. Right now, I'm not really feeling that. Maybe in a while, maybe after things settle down, and we're not really in the middle of it, because you don't know how the story ends. We don't know what's going to happen. And I feel good now, but a few months ago, someone asked me that. I'm like, I'm so stressed out. I don't want to write about this at all. And even when I wrote Hurricane, it was kind of like a catharsis, or kind of a therapy for myself. But this event was over, because during that hurricane time, I actually was having chest pains and palpitations during Harvey. I was really stressed out. And with this, I just, maybe after a while, but I don't want to have a book with masks on the kids and things right now. Maybe in a while I may feel differently.
Do you have a special place where you write?
I really write everywhere. That's a great question. I do I'm in my office now. I write here. I'll have my laptop out on my porch in the backyard, or I have a comfy chair in my room. I write in that. So I really write everywhere. In the first 2 books, before I really had, people knew about the series, I would write in my car. I'd write at kids' practices with Queen of the Bee, my daughter's softball practice. I'd be in the stands, because it's like, once I get immersed in the world and get the story going, I want to know how it ends myself. I have to keep going. And once I really get in that flow, I kind of write anywhere. I really can tune out what's going on around me as I'm writing.
Besides the libraries, where else can we find your books?
You can find them on my website at TonyaDuncanEllis.com, on Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Target and Walmart.com. And they're also available for order at Blue Willow Bookshop in Houston and Katie Budget Books. And there are some online and different small indie booksellers around the country that carry the books.
Is there any chance we can get a sneak peek of your new book?
Well, not really. It's on this computer right now. The newest book you can, Sophie Washington Class Retreat, the newest Sophie Washington book. Here's the cover for that one. And that was released in November. And it's about her at during a class retreat trip at Camp Glowing Springs. So they're at a camping trip and they do archery, swimming, and they have spooky stories around the campfire. But the newest book I'm working on is actually not a Sophie Washington book. It's about a little boy, and he's around her age, and he actually right now he's attending Xavier. She might have a cameo in that one, but she's not really mentioned in it at all. He's a totally different character.
Do you have any book recommendations for young readers?
Let's see, some good books for my readers. I'm always reading books. What have I just read that's a middle grade? This one is one of my giveaway blended. This is a great book for Black History Times. It's about a girl who is mixed race girl, and it has a really impactful ending, but this is a great book for middle grade readers. Nick Stone's Clean Getaway is a great book for young kids. It talks about the civil rights. He takes a road trip with his grandma and visits some civil rights areas or historic areas in the South. So this is good. Renee Watson has a great book called Ways to Make Sunshine, middle grade. That's a really good book. A character kind of reminds me has that flavor like Sophie. A fun, lighthearted book that's good with an African-American girl main character. And also, Crystal Allen's going to be on, I know, this month. I'm going to tune in for her. Her Magnificent Maya Tibbs series is wonderful. It's a great book for girls in that age, or girls and boys, readers in the age group. So there's just so many out here that are wonderful middle grade books that I can recommend.
What books do you enjoy reading?
I read in everything that's out, like whenever I see some new, because there's so many different middle grade books that come out. They're not any go-tos. And I don't like to read the same things over and over again. But Crystal Allen, I am looking forward to. I know she's working on a new book. I'm looking forward to seeing that. The lady who wrote, she wrote Something to Say and Piecing Me Together. Lisa Ramey Moore, I think. I love her books. They're great for this the middle grade. Jason Reynolds, I fell in love with his books. I just read one so far, but I've got some more of those on my list to read. My TBR list grows daily. There's so many. And I really read across genres. I love the kids' book. I also read historical fiction, romance, I just am always reading basically. And I want my library back open so that I can browse. I can check them out anyway, but I like to browse through the stacks too.
Who's your favorite author?
That's a great question. And I think that's kind of like asking who's your favorite child to a parent, because I really don't have a one favorite author. The ones that I like in my genre are, again, I love Renee Watson's work. It is just beautiful. I love her books. I just finished another book from her, and they're all great. Just the way they're put together, the simplicity, the beauty of the language. I like the Jada Jones series. Those books are great. And Shelley Starling Lyons, the author, she's kind of like an unofficial mentor to me. I met her at an event, and she's just really championed me and helped me. I love her work. She also writes a lot of beautiful picture books that are African-American history, like one that's called Sing a Song, talking about the Black national anthem. They're really historic, beautiful books that I wish I had known about, or they may not have been out when my kids were that age, but they're the kind I would love to gobble up for my kids. But there are just so many that I like that it's hard for me to pinpoint just one. But those are some I would recommend. And also Mildred D. Taylor, who wrote Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry. That's one I really love. And her birthday is on the same day as mine too. So, but I love that book, and I go back to that one.
I think I cried a lot when I read that one.
Yeah. Sweet. great historic story, just teaching us about how people lived and what they went through. And Maya Angelou, I love her writing. And I was telling Christina before we started, I was fortunate to get a Maya Angelou Barbie doll. And it's one of those collector's editions. I wanted to give one of those in my giveaway, but I couldn't find anymore. And I'm not giving mine away. I'm keeping it for myself. But I love her books. And I actually was fortunate enough to meet her as a college student. She came and spoke at our college, and we got to pick her up from the airport. So I got to spend a couple hours with her. And so that was just a phenomenal experience with a phenomenal woman, having that opportunity.
Do you have a favorite memory of going to the library growing up?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. One of my fondest memories, this is not well, one thing, when I was little, my mother would take me to the library once a week. And that's how I became a lover of books. And I would have a bag of books every week. So I remember that. And I also volunteered at the library shelving books as a teenager. But one of my fondest memories at my school library, we read the Little House on the Prairie books, and the librarian had like a little tea for us. And we had tea, and I think it was lemonade and cookies. But I always just associated the library with just a warm place where and I've always loved books. So I always have so many fond memories of being in the library. Yeah, but the libraries just everywhere. I've lived in many different cities, and one of the first things I always love to do is get my library card so that I can go to my local library.
How did you feel the first time you saw your books in the library? How did your kids react?
I felt like it was Christmas morning. I took a picture, and I was happy as I could be to see my babies in the library. And my kids, they were happy. I talk about my books all the time. I'm working constantly writing, so I guess it's kind of part of their regular life. So, and they've seen me have different successes, so they were happy for me. Yes.
This has been an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for doing this.
For having me.
Please check out Tonya Duncan Ellis at her webpage.
It's TonyaDuncanEllis.com. And my Instagram and Facebook are at Tonya Ellis Books. And I'm also on Twitter at Tonya D. Ellis.
Perfect. Okay. And if you liked this event, we do have 2 more author interviews coming up. Until then, you can check more out at www.fortbend.lib.tx.us/events. For this type of event or any other, please let us know if you enjoyed this program and if you'd like to see more of it. In the meantime, thank you. Have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll see you around.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Bye-bye.